Great news! There's a quick way you can save money. Switch to Geico. Geico could help you get great coverage at a great price, and it only takes 15 minutes to see if you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Go to geico.com today and see how much you could save.
Caught Offside with Andrew Gunling and JJ Devaney.
Oh, yes! Caught Offside from the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Andrew Gunling, JJ Devaney. What's up, brother?
Hey, man, how are you?
I'll tell you what. I'm a different person than I was the last time you and I did this podcast together.
Why is that?
Because in the time since, the interregnum, if you will, I saw United Passions.
Oh, wow.
Which, by the way, looking at it, inexplicably, it was on ABC, regular network television, at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, Sunday morning, I guess that would be.
Weird.
I couldn't even believe it. You talk about doing a double take going through the TV guide. So I knew I wasn't going to be up that late, so I hit DVR. And then the next morning, going into the DVR, it can when you forget for a second that you DVR'd that movie, and you see that in your queue, it can very easily be confused as porn if you just think of that name.
Absolutely.
United Passions.
United Passions sounds like a kind of a Man United porn from the mid-noughties.
I'll tell you what, it's basically Jules Rimet porn. What it is. Now, here's what I'll say. I know everybody expects the cliche take, oh, it was awful, I hated it, yeah, make fun.
Andrew,
and that's exactly
$600.
what I'm going to do all those things. It was every bit. Now, I'll tell you what, full disclosure, wait, what'd you just say? It made $600.
You remember, this is like 2 years ago, 2 years ago.
We had a film critic on to talk to us about it.
We had Scott Tobias, the noted film critic, on to discuss. By the way, this is the FIFA film, the FIFA propaganda vehicle about the history of FIFA, but only the good stuff, not the backhanders or the corruption or any of that.
Yeah.
And Scott said it was awful.
Mm-hmm. He was right.
But we came on it because it had made so little money in the box office that weekend.
And because it worked out so horribly or perfectly, depending on how you want to look at it.
Same year as the Raids.
It came out almost like in confluence with the Raids of FIFA. It was incredible.
It's like if someone sat down a month before Kennedy was shot and said, "Did we ever do a film about a president being killed?"
It was
bingo. Love it.
It was so bad. I turned it off. I was about less than halfway through. For any poor souls out there that have seen it, once the Jules Rimet stuff ended, I was done at that point. I looked at my wife. Jack was taking a nap, which is kind of precious time. You know, he's only asleep for a couple hours during the day. Now you can get stuff done.
Yeah,
I'm sitting here.
You got a kid. Every day is precious. We get it.
No. But the nap specifically, like that's me time. And I'm sitting here on a Sunday during that time, and I'm watching this god-awful film. So I shut it off. But yeah, it glorifies. I mean, it's all the things that we were told it was. And I did do a thing that I very rarely do. I went on to our Twitter account as soon as I saw it, and I tweeted out the picture of my guide showing that it was on, and I told people to DVR it and watch it. So if you were like me and you attempted to watch it, I'd be curious for other people's thoughts as well.
I would imagine that if you go to a store in a rural part of America, you will be able to pick up the Blu-ray DVD for about as much as a Twinkie.
Don't pay for it.
Oh, you should
don't pay for it.
Misery payments.
One thing I will say, though, full disclosure also, and a warning to any of our British listeners, it does not portray the British very kindly in this movie.
Well, I mean,
my God,
they were, in terms of international soccer and international participation, the English FA in particular were very skeptical.
They are made to look like just the worst people on earth.
They were doing preemptive Brexits from soccer by not joining in for a long time.
So there you go. United Passions. Everyone enjoy it. Let's get into some of the soccer that took place over the weekend, because a lot took place, and we'll start with everybody's favorite tournament that came to a conclusion, the Carabao Cup.
Demand for that drop was huge,
what's wrong
incredible.
with you people.
Some of our listeners said it's sad that we won't be playing this drop.
All of you that wanted that noise back, you all have issues that need to be addressed. It's such an obtrusive, obnoxious sound. But let's talk about it as Manchester City prevail. 3-0 is your final.
I'm glad, by the way, when you sent the rundown out, which you do, I'm glad that you broke this final, which was deeply anticlimactic. I'm glad you broke it up this way. Otherwise, I feel it'd be boring.
Heroes and zeros is how we've broken it down. 3 from each. My guess is you and I have not talked about who we've selected for this.
No.
So I'm guessing we're going to have a lot of crossover. But shall we begin?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, who's your first hero?
My first hero is Vincent Kompany.
Oh, same with me. There we go already.
Considering the last few injury-ravaged seasons, it's fair to think that Vincent Kompany himself probably doubted whether he would see too many more days in the sun wearing the sky blue. So for him to score, Andrew, and play well,
and
not be in the least bit remotely troubled by Aubameyang, great day out for him.
Here's what his goal sounded like on ESPN.
From the training ground, and it's 2! And guess who? Captain Fantastic! A first goal for Vincent Kompany since last May, and has that just handed Manchester City the Carabao Cup.
You know what's interesting to me? He scored that goal, and you could clearly see in his celebration what it meant to him.
Well,
I mean, he went wild, and justifiably so. And I was thinking more about it, and I was reading about it a little bit too. It goes without saying that we don't know what the future holds for him. He's 31 years old, young enough where you presume he could keep playing. But I don't know where that's going to be because, look at this club and look at the money that's poured into this club. Even if Vincent Kompany manages to play through the remainder of the season and be close to what we expect him to be, with the money that they have, do you really expect that Manchester City are going to go into next season having to rely on him as center back again? Even if they love this guy, club legend, all that stuff, they're not going to do it. It's a cold business, and they'll get somebody that they can count on for an entire season.
And Guardiola hasn't been able to count on him consistently over the last 2 years. And that's not his fault. He's just broken down that regularly. So the signings he's made have, I suppose, looked to prepare for a post-Kompany era, which is fair enough. That's the way the game works.
And that's why
he was as elated as he was, because like I said, he mightn't have too many more days in the sun at City.
I think he knows that.
And the fans were singing his name before he scored the goal.
Yeah, I think
they appreciate it.
And I don't know that he's going to retire. But there was something interesting I read where Craig Bellamy, who is still fairly close with Vincent Kompany and I believe has a position within Manchester City, he kind of hinted that Kompany has been following Pep Guardiola around essentially with a notepad, just jotting down everything that this guy does. Whether he also has a degree in business, I think, that he recently achieved. So clearly Kompany knows his days in football are numbered and is weighing his options, it appears, as to what that next move is going to be. So you said it was a day in the sun for him. I don't know how many more he's going to have, and you could tell that it meant a whole lot to him. I had Kompany as well. My second hero, I went with Sergio Aguero. The goal that he scored, it was pretty simple, but it bears mentioning that it's his 30th goal in all competitions, the 4th time he has had a 30-plus goal season for Manchester City. Yeah,
I went Aguero with my number 3, so we don't have to go over it when we get to 3, but I said it was a big goal for a big striker who remarkably hasn't actually had that many big goals. Prior to
what did you just say?
Yeah. No, in cup finals. Let me qualify that. Do you want to play Aguero?
To hear the words come out of somebody's mouth, he hasn't scored that many big goals when he has one of the biggest in the history of the sport.
No, but look, this is more interesting than that banality that you've just trotted out there.
That's ridiculous.
Thank you, Mark.
We all know about 2012. I'm talking about in cup finals, and Daniel Story tweeted this out. He of Football 365. The gap in Sergio Aguero's goal scoring cup finals. Olympic gold medal match 2008, no goals. Europa League final 2010, no goal. FA Cup final 2013, no goal. League Cup final 2014, no goal. World Cup 2014, no goal. Copa America 2015, no goal. League Cup 2016, no goal. Copa America 2016, no goal. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, that's not a stat to completely dismiss all he's done in his career. He's a fantastic player, and he's very close to 200 goals for Manchester City. The point being is just that goal was important in breaking that narrative.
Fair enough. Who's your number 2 then?
My number 2 is Pep Guardiola, because it was interesting to me in his post-match comments that Guardiola thanked the City Group owners for their faith through a difficult first season, which is a measure of how glad he is to get over the hump and have his first trophy, but also a measure of the expectations at City, that even a manager in Guardiola's position can say something like that. I'm glad they stood by me during that first season.
There you go. My third one, I went kind of in a different direction here, and I'm curious what you'll think of this. I went with Gary Neville for comments that he made. He was on the Sky Sports call.
You're giving one of the heroes of a cup final involving the hated Manchester City to a noted Red.
I'm just trying to be different.
A historic Red.
Outside of the box.
You are way outside the box.
Well, listen to what he said. This was about Arsenal right after the third goal had happened. Quote, "In the minute before that goal, I mentioned the walking of the Arsenal players and then the retreating runs of Aaron Ramsey and Granit Xhaka, ambling, jogging back, an absolute disgrace. They are an absolute disgrace. Walking on a football pitch at Wembley, giving up, spineless. And look at that." This is when the camera cut to that child who was sobbing. "And look at that. That's what you cause. All a fan wants to see is a player running as fast as he can, as hard as he can, and they're walking around on a football pitch. It's not even a team that plays good football. Liverpool play better. Tottenham play better. Manchester City play better. There are 3 or 4 teams that play better football than them right now." End of quote. And by the way, that last part there is almost seems like a favorable comment to make about Arsenal, that there's only 3 or 4 teams that play better than them right now.
The spineless thing resonates because...
Yeah, I thought so too.
It's like for years we've been saying it, but how do you measure spine? How do you measure guts? Like it's not like pass completion, or it's not like running up and down where I can measure how much ground you've covered. They just seem to be completely without, as to quote Troy Deeney, that great philosopher, cojones.
And the third goal in particular, I mean, on the heels, the second goal happens. You're not out of it yet. I know that City have one hand on the trophy at that point, but it's not over. There's still 30 plus minutes to go in the game or so, and to allow Danilo to make such kind of an easy run through the defense, play that ball in, David Silva lets it run by, and then the
turn was very, very good, but it was very
so
easy. Yeah,
it felt so easy.
They just seemed listless and limp and. Look, we'll get to the zeros.
Well, are you ready? You want to do that
let's
now?
do the zeros now.
Okay, so we'll go to the zeros. You go first.
Look, Mustafi. Now, let me start there. Now, this seems so obvious, but does the buck always stop with the manager? Of course it does. But there are times when you're just like, Wenger can do nothing about that. There is nothing left to be said about what Mustafi did, or rather didn't do, except to say, Andrew, it's as shameful a piece of play or non-play as I've ever seen. It's shameful. Get up and head the ball back. Yeah. Straight from a kick out. Route 1 Manchester City. We so rarely say anything like that. It was pathetic.
Yep.
It's not a foul. It's a contact sport. He's backing into you. It doesn't... By the way, getting off the D train in the morning at Bryant Park, I get jostled more than that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it was poor. Incredibly poor. Here's what it sounded like.
Here is Aguero, and that is simple. It doesn't have to be pretty all the time. Sometimes Route 1 can be the best option. Kun Aguero, a 30th goal of the season for City, and the deadlock is broken in the cup final. 1-0.
You can say what you want about Mustafi, and he's taken a ton of criticism for it.
Yeah.
The finish by Aguero was very nice.
It was very, very good.
I mean, a little chip from about 19 yards out. It was a pretty composed finish. Mustafi obviously messed up, but there were still other defenders on that play that allowed Aguero to just continue that run right through the heart.
Can I...
You want to educate me? Okay, come on. I know my American brain, my brain, I'm not smart enough to understand the complexities.
It's not that. Andrew, when you're playing, we'll say wide, they were playing with a back three, right? So you're right in the sense that they shouldn't switch off like that. But you've got to gamble on that far out the field that your centre half is not going to find himself, first of all, wrong side, and second of all, completely and utterly listless and lifeless and cowardly in going for that ball, looking at the referee. You expect him to challenge. If Mustafi is struggling there, give away a free kick. Go up and try and win it. Give away a free kick. Don't do that. And they switched off. They just assumed he was going to get his head on it.
My zeros, my 1 and 2. Can I kind of give them to you in conjunction? Because they're pretty similar.
Okay.
My first one is Wenger, which I know it feels very easy and cliche, but here's why. I'm going to read this quote from him. He said this after the match. I believe we were a bit unlucky, Wenger told Sky Sports. The second goal, I've just watched it again. It was an important goal for the game, and for me it was 100% offside. I feel like everything went against us today. The second goal is offside. I don't know who is sat in the VAR, the VAR. I just watched it again. It's a mystery to me how you can sit there and watch that on VAR and not give offside. You and I have gone back and forth about what a manager should or shouldn't say publicly. But to me, this has just become too much of his MO after bad Arsenal performances. Excuse making. I mean, at some point, Arsenal were bad today. Can't he just say, this was not our best performance today? The Manchester City was better.
Everything that went wrong did go wrong, but like it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel.
It felt like it was more excuse making. That there's just no accountability right now with him as their manager.
He talked in the same way that Claude Puel had a right to talk about in last year's final, where he was like, I don't know how we didn't win that game. Right. He was talking in the sense that, oh, woe is us, things happened to us. You did nothing. Nothing. There was only one player on the field that it looked like really put a shift in and tried to stem the tide, and that was Jack Wilshere, and to be honest, he didn't make any impact.
Well, he is my second zero.
Oh, Lord.
Well, for similar reasons, because here's what he put on Instagram today. Hard to put into words my emotions about yesterday. City are a good team and deserve to win yesterday. A lot of people have had their say on us, and we have to accept criticism when we lose. By the way, the number of misspellings in here already, through 2 sentences, is truly shocking.
I can see you're angered.
That being said, I can't accept some of the decisions that went against us yesterday. Whatever you say about the first goal, it's a foul. The second goal is offside. There should have been a second yellow in the first half. Yes, this happens in football, but it's still hard to accept. And people say we are looking for excuses, but these are facts. Anyway, we need to respond starting on Thursday. Thanks to all the Gooners for your support, and trust me, we feel the same, but we need to stick together.
Well, that's pathetic. That's honestly pathetic.
There's just nobody takes accountability. I know he says at the start of that.
And you're right, though, but that's coming from the top. That's coming from the top, Andrew. It's seeped in now. If they're spineless, if they're lacking in what John Giles calls moral courage on the field, then it's coming from the manager.
And the second yellow that he's saying, first of all, I don't know necessarily that I remember exactly what he's referring to, but didn't Arsenal get away with a pretty high boot at one point in that game that could have probably been a red?
This is all irrelevant.
No, you're right. It's just, I don't know, those 2 quotes in particular, on a day where Arsenal were so bad, to be talking about being unlucky, it just felt like it rang so hollow for me. Those quotes in particular really bugged me.
Yeah. They just bear no relation to the game I watched yesterday.
No.
My number 2 is Wenger as well, and I don't really have much to add to that. 2-year contracts winding down. Moves behind the scenes with Sven Millenstadt from Dortmund coming in to take over player recruitment, something that Wenger had always fought against, that he would be in full control of things. And I just feel like maybe he had a chance at the end of last season to go out on his own terms, and that's just gone now. It's not going to get better. I don't see them winning the Europa League after that performance at home against Ostersunds. I don't see them.
Well, their draw was not very favourable.
AC Milan, who are hitting form right now, but we'll get to that later. I just don't see this getting better, Andrew, and I know empires crumble from within and all the cliches you want to roll out, but I do think he had a chance to leave with a modicum of, nicely bookended with some kind of win, but that's all over now.
Seems like that.
This is going to end outside the Champions League again, and Arsenal looking totally and utterly adrift.
Yeah. My third zero, this is a little bit harsh maybe, but I went with Aubameyang.
So did I.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, here was my reason, and we'll see how it jives with yours. I've been reading a lot of specifically Arsenal supporters coming to his defense, saying, what do you expect this guy to do? The lack of service from midfielders is just non-existent, which is that's a fair criticism.
Especially without Mkhitaryan on the field.
But I just feel like that sort of critique to me is just easier to stomach when you're talking about a less heralded striker than Aubameyang. He's supposed to be one of the best in Europe, which essentially means one of the best in the world. When you're talking about a guy that cost, what was he, £56 million? I believe was his price tag. I mean, I'm sorry. In a cup final, a guy that costs that much, who's a focal point for the team, there just has to be moments where he creates his own opportunities. You can't always necessarily be relying on the midfield to provide him with some sort of, on a platter service. And by the way, there was one early in the game that he wasn't able to finish. Kyle Walker had something to do with it.
I know, but he had a second bite at that, and he's got to score.
Yeah. So, even if he has to force shots from 18 yards out, maybe you force the keeper into a save, maybe you get a deflect. He just has to do something.
Or drop off into the midfield, try and pick it up and run at people. I know it's not his game.
It just felt like at a certain point he was resigned that this wasn't going to happen, and that was it.
For me, I don't think Arsenal were ever going to win that game anyway, but if they're going to give themselves a chance, they had to take the lead, and that was a golden opportunity. One they did not carve out again. Yeah. Also, the fact, I'm kind of focusing on what you said as well, and this is partially tactics. The fact we didn't see Aubameyang in a race with Kompany does show City's dominance, but that was a potential mismatch. Let's be honest.
Yep.
Stretch him out. If I was Wenger, I would have started. It's so anti-Arsenal, it sounds ridiculous. I would have gone for a few more balls every now and again into the channels and try and pull him out of position and stretch him and get Aubameyang, who will be much quicker than Kompany. And it never happened. And I'm sorry, if he's as heralded as he is, you could have done with a bit more from him up front.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, let's continue talking about this game right now with one of the guys who was on the call here.
It was a Scottish experience. It was noted. A friend of mine texted me, he goes, 2 Scots. Yeah. Together on the call.
Mark and Craig.
A Jambo and... Is it fair to call him a Glasgow Celtic man? I don't know.
Well, you can.
You can ask him. That's Craig Burley on the line with us right now. Craig, what's up, man? How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Wasn't the greatest cup final, was it, unfortunately?
Craig...
because it was one-sided.
Well, on that, I'm glad you start with that, because that was going to be the first thing that I said to you. You had... one of my all-time favorite commentator moments during this game. I think it was somewhere around the 55th minute during, I guess what you could only describe as a particularly ugly stretch of play, mainly for Arsenal. And you uttered the words, and it was so genuine the way you said it, quote, "What the hell is going on?" Do you remember saying that, and was that basically a microcosm of how you felt about the entire game?
Yeah, because I think at that point somebody had just launched a ball back to Ospina. He'd sort of tried to clear it, and then Chambers tried some sort of overhead scissor kick, all in the edge of, all in and around the penalty area. And at that time of the game, Arsenal City were just battering them, and I just thought, what the hell is going on with Arsenal at this moment? I just couldn't figure it out, and I think it kind of summed them up. They were just. I think yesterday was a just what the hell moment for Arsenal in general, not just for that comment, but I think it sort of typified just what they weren't about yesterday, because there was nothing. Man City can beat you. We all know that. We know some teams have had success against them this season. Liverpool have beaten them. We know they've had a couple of tricky games and whatnot. They've went out the cup to Wigan. Things can happen. But generally you see a team, guys, trying to do so. Like Liverpool, when they beat them at Anfield, they went for the jugular early, they pressed, they harried, they tried to make mistakes, they got the goals, and then they knew they were probably going to lose some goals. But that was their game plan, come what may. I just didn't see Arsenal guys having anything yesterday. It was quite worrying to see.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to tee you up with this question, but I do want to ask you. So, Mustafi, you played centre midfield. You're a centre midfielder, and you see your centre half act in that unacceptable manner and looking at the ref for something that wasn't even a foul. I'm presuming, and any dressing room I've ever been in, at half time, you're the centre mid, you are giving your centre half a complete and total dressing down for doing that. Why is it that I feel that didn't happen at half time?
I think a lot of people feel that way, JJ. I think it's just the way Arsenal have spiralled into sort of what they are as a club and as a very good club, by the way.
Yeah.
And I must touch on that. They are a very good club, classy club, always have been. But they seem to be in some sort of comfort zone now. And we were talking about it in our ESPN FC show tonight about Mesut Ozil. And just to digress a little bit, and I wasn't criticising Mesut Ozil generally for what happened yesterday, because it was so difficult when you've got effectively 3 centre-backs and 2 wing-backs, and then all the midfielders come back, and Aubameyang's up there on his own, so it's hard for somebody like Ozil to shine with so little possession and so little cohesion. But why the hell would he sign a contract? When he looks around at guys making mistakes like Mustafi, and everybody can make mistakes, but when he looks around and sees Chambers is playing centre-half, when he looks around and sees Xhaka and Wilshere and all these players, and Jack Wilshere's been lauded by some recently, saying, well, he's back, and, this is great for England at the World Cup. Do me a favour. I mean, please, honestly, I just, when he looks around at these guys, you must think, why the hell did he sign a new contract? Apart from the fact he's become some very rich and well-paid individual in terms of the Premier League, I understand that. But you can see, we've all played football at different levels.